Hi guys, Jason here, aka Elite Flight, and I'm about to do a desktop build of the ImpulseRC Reverb. That's a frame that's been recently released, and which was designed by FinalGlideAus, aka Chad Nowak. Now I'm going to follow the, or pretty much follow the ImpulseRC assembly manual for this exercise. So the first thing you need to do, according to that assembly manual, is install your sunk nuts into the upper main plate. Now, one of the things about the Reverb is it doesn't have a single main plate. It's got two main plates, and the main plates one of the main plates acts as a squash plate, so your arms go between the two main plates. You've got the lower main plate here, which is 2 mil thick, and it's got these two triangle cutouts. I hope you can see there, and it's got these 4 rectangular cutouts, which are where your K plates go. Now, your K plates are the camera mount on the ImpulseRC Alien and on the Reverb here. So that's these guys here, that's your camera mounts, and they slot into there, into these slots here. So that's your lower main plate. The upper main plate, where we need to put the sunk nuts, is this guy here. It's got 4, well, they're not rectangular, but they're close to rectangular cutouts, and it's also got these big holes, these 8 big holes. Now there's 8 big holes where the sunk nuts need to go. Now, for those of you who haven't worked with sunk nuts before, a sunk nut is a nut which is fitted into the carbon, pressed into the carbon, and it stays there permanently. You don't need to use a spanner when you put the bolt in or out of the sunk nut, because the sunk nut is fixed into the carbon and can't turn. So let's have a quick look at the sunk nut. And what you've got is basically, it's got an M3 thread. It's got 2 halves height-wise, 2 halves. This half is smooth and that protrudes out of the carbon, and this half is serrated. It's got little teeth and that goes into the carbon. So there's a couple of ways you can put them in. Some guys just sit them on top, sit the teeth on top of the hole like this, so there's the teeth in, and they give it a good whack with a hammer. Now the problem with that is possibly can crack the carbon. They don't always sit in straight, and they don't always go all the way home, and then you have to give them a couple of whacks, increasing the chances of cracking the carbon, it not going in home, etc, etc. The better way of doing it is you grab an M3 nut, you put a washer on it to stop the, an M3 bolt, you put a washer on it to stop the bolt biting into the carbon, and then what you do is you grab your carbon, you grab your sunk nut, you start screwing your bolt in, and my clumsy fingers aren't helping me, let's try that again. You grab your sunk nut, and your bolt, you start them off, so your bolt engages your sunk nut. God, who wouldn't think it would be so much trouble? Alright, like that. So that started off. And then you grab your driver. Once it starts getting to the carbon, you grab your driver and you just do it up. Get it as straight as you can, and you just do it up. And that will pull the sunk nut down into the carbon, you hope, like that. Now this is the beauty of a sunk nut. Now when I want to take it out, I just don't have to worry about a spanner. I can just undo the bolt side, and the sunk nut will stay put, like it has here. Now, as you can see, that washer's bitten in. I think you can see, you may be able to see, the washer has bitten in there and left a mark, which is why you put the washer on there, because that spreads the stress of the bolt head going. If you didn't have that, the bolt head would probably sink in quite a bit further. So that's the first one. Now rinse and repeat for the other 8 sunk nuts. Yes, this is going to be a terrible, boring process for you. So grab our sunk nut, get the bolt going into it. There we go. And bring it home. So the beauty of this is that pretty much it lines itself, goes all the way in. It's a sort of slow process. There's no impact. You're not going to crack the carbon like this, I don't think, or you're much less likely to. And it's simple. Don't need a hydraulic press, anything like that. Just straight in. Next sunk nut, please. Now, as you'll note, all these sunk nuts go on the same side. It doesn't really matter what side they go on, because the upper plate is symmetrical, so you can flip it over either side. It doesn't matter which side these go on, just as long as they're all on the same side. Next, sunk nut. Probably I'm actually over tightening these a bit when I'm going in, and that's probably why I'm getting the indentations on the other side. I'm going to try being a bit less aggressive with the tightening. So you just have to hold the sunk nut while it gets started. Once it gets that initial bite, you're fine, in it goes. You can let go of it then. Once those teeth engage the carbon to start with, you just let go and watch carefully. I reckon that's about all the way in. And let's see if I take that off, if I get less of a mark. And there's still a bit of a mark there, still might be going a bit too aggressive. Next sunk nut. Alrighty. Okay. Second to last. Pop it on, get it started, get it on. Just hold it till the nut starts biting into the carbon, then you can let go. And I'd say that's all the way home. As you can see, this is the beauty of the sunk nut. You don't need to hold the nut, so when that's sitting there with another plate on top of it, you don't have to fuck around when you're trying to take your arms off. And on to the last one here. Sorry this is taking so long, guys. My manual dexterity is not so good. Lost a bit of dexterity in a car accident, ended up with a neck injury. So my hands don't work as well as they used to. I wouldn't say I was ever a super craftsman, but that's certainly not as good as I was. Oops. For some reason this one seems a bit harder to get in. Not sure what's going on there. But that's it, that's the last sunk nut. Now, that goes down. The next part of this exercise is popping the lower main plate on and the first arm. So what you do is you need an arm, the lower main plate here, one arm, the lower main plate, two conical nuts, two of these guys, and a 10 and a 12mm cup head bolt. 10 and a 12. Okay, so what has to happen now is you take your plate, your lower front plate, you grab your conical nuts, can pick them up. I'll use tweezers because my dexterity is terrible. And what happens is the 10mm is going to go on the outside. You put your bolts in the conical nuts. So the point of these conical nuts is to protect the bolt heads if the frame is skidding along the ground or whatever, so the thread doesn't get damaged. Now what happens is the 10mm nut goes on the outer hole and the 12mm nut goes on the inner hole. The 12mm nut's eventually going to have your flight controller mounted on it. So you grab that, you pop it through. So that's a 12mm on the inside, a 10mm on the outside here. You grab your arm. Now I've got to work out the arm orientation. My guess is, well, I don't really know. My guess is the 45. They're not symmetrical, these arms. So let's see a bit more detail. Get these two holes lined up. So how's that going to work? Let's get another arm on here and those holes lined up. I reckon I've got that the wrong way. Let's try that the other way. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so let's pop that down for a sec. So if we look at these arms, there's a kind of beveling, or there's a V shape here. The longer shape of the V, the longer edge there, goes to the center of the quad, and this shorter edge goes on the outside. So I'll show you that here on this guy here. So the longer goes on the inside and the shorter goes up there. I guess I don't know, probably the easiest way to do it is just show the orientation here, which we've now got. So the thing to remember though is an M10 on the outside and an M12 on the inside. Next, grab your upper main plate, orientate it, and here we go, those wonderful sunk nuts. So I'm going to pop one of those sunk nuts down and just use the 12mm one to start with. So let's grab that. Yep, and grab our driver. Get it started. Now I'm not going to tighten these up all the way to start with because I want a bit of play. So when I put the arms in, when I put the other arms in, there's a bit of wiggle room for them to wiggle in so they can seat themselves and align themselves. So here we go. Now we rinse and repeat. So it's got to be a 10. That's got to be a 12. Next arm, please. As we say, the shorter one goes sort of out. And it goes like that. 12mm bolt on the inner hole, which, as I say, is where your flight controller is going to end up. Oh, let's see what's going on. There we go, beautiful. I'm going to get that sort of going. As I said, I'm not going to tighten these all the way up here. I just want to get them in, and once all four are in, I'll start tightening them up. So again, 10mm on the outside, the short one on the outside, because that's just going to hold the arm, whereas the 12mm is going to also mount the flight controller. Get in there, you bugger. Where is it? There we go. Another reason to have them loose is so you can pivot them around and get them to align like that. Okay, so before I go much further, I'm just going to get the rest of these conical nuts and match them with some bolts. So 10mm and 12mm. Could be a 12mm. and a 10mm. So let's grab another 12mm. Get it ready. Get the arm again, the shorter side facing sort of up, out, depending on how you look at it. Get myself 12mm on the inner hole here. Boom, boom, lovely, that's in. Now I'll grab myself a 10mm for this outer hole. Whoops, that's not in. I've missed the hole there. That's probably the first time I've heard that today. Swordsman. There we go, that's a bit tighter. You can kind of feel the arm hitting the wedge, the shape on the other arm. So again, I'm not tightening this all the way up, I'm just getting it kind of tight enough so that it holds in there. Again, 10mm on the outside. Beautiful. As I was saying before, this is the great thing about the sunk nut. I don't have to hold that nut. The sunk nut's just holding itself. Okay, last arm here. And you can kind of feel that going home. 12mm on the inside. And 10mm on the outside. Now I can kind of start thinking about putting just a bit of tension on these. I still won't tighten them all the way silly. This is just a dry run. To work out how the frame's going to go. Personally, for me, I like to use Loctite. I still like to inspect my quads before I fly, make sure there's no holes there, but I like to use Loctite to increase the probability that there are all the bolts are in the place they're supposed to be when I take off. Alright, so then we've got the basic frame. You've got your upper and your lower main plates, your arms, and they're quite nicely there. Now that, pretty stiff. Okay, so as I was saying before, those M12 bolts, the reason they stick through, I hope you can see them there, they stick through, they protrude through, and the reason for that is because that's where your flight mounts, your flight controller mounts will go. So you get these rubber flight controller mounts here. I've already put the nylon nuts on just for convenience here, and they just screw on like that. Now your 10mm bolts are pretty much flush with the sunk nuts. Now mine aren't all even because I haven't screwed them all up the way tight, so they're kind of, they've all got different tension, they're not all the way in. Now the next thing is you add your standoffs. So the standoffs are attached with 6mm bolts, which are, where did I put them? These little guys, they're basically shorter ones. And the way the standoffs go is you've got a, I think it's 24.5, which goes on the rear. Boom. You've got a, you've lost it. No, there it is. Okay, you've got a, I think it's 14.5, which goes just behind where the flight controller will be, just there. That's reason that's 14.5 is because that's going to have the antenna mounts and the 16mm bolt going through there to kind of provide a bit of strength. So let's pop that hole through it. Let's get that up in there if I can. Might use tweezers for this because that'll save me messing around with my no good dexterity. And it goes. Dump. You got a great pedunkadunk, babes. You got a great pedunkadunk. Now again, I'm not doing this all the way up. I'm just getting a feel for how the frames goes together and what it looks like. Now, last a 30mm at the front. I'm just going to raise this camera a little bit, which will hopefully give you guys a better view. Now there's another 30mm which goes right here behind the camera mount, behind the area where the camera will be, between the rear cutouts for the camera mount. Now that, I guess, provides a bit more support, because that's otherwise would be a fairly long unsupported run of carbon, so that probably provides a bit more support for the top plate, and that also provides a place for the screw for the rear of the GoPro mount here to screw into, so the GoPro mount fits on those 3 standoffs basically, with the carbon top plate in between, of course. So let's now just pop in the rest of these standoffs. Grab my other 24.5, pop that on the rear. My other 14.5, and recall we're using the 6mm M3s for these. The other 14.5 goes just behind where the flight controller will be, so that's right there. A bit awkward to get the screw in with my shitty dexterity, so yep, we use tweezers. There we go. Alright, and finally the last 30mm. Where's the last 6mm screw? There it is, beautiful. So there's a 6mm screw, and the last 30mm goes to the front corner, of course, so 30mm at the front. There we go. So in the ImpulseRC, that's step 6. The next step is to mount your camera, which I will do just for a show, I guess. I've got an Arrow Predator Mini, I think it's called. You know, I'm not actually going to mount the camera, I'll just put the camera mount in. The Mini comes with a separate camera mount, and I'll just put that in just so we can see how that kind of works. So what happens is you've got your K plates here, thusly, and the way they are orientated is exactly like I'm holding them. This is the front of the quad. You've got this rear arc, and then there's an arc at the front lower. So ImpulseRC give you these little is it going to fit? It should fit. I believe it'll fit. Let's have a look. Might be a problem. Oh no, there you go. Okay, cool. So ImpulseRC give you these little 1.5 M1.5 4mm long screws, and they go through the slots, and that's however you got to do it for your camera. And in this particular case with the Predator Mini, I have to use that hole and that hole, and they're both going to go through the arc there. These 2 arcs, I think. I'm just a bit worried that it's going to give me too much tilt. Let's not worry about that now. Let's just get it on so we can see what it looks like. Bugger. In fact, try that again. Drive me crazy. So here's a little thing I do sometimes. I've got a bit of blue tack here, and if I'm having a problem with the screw messing me around like this, because for whatever reason, what I do is get me blob of blue tack, put it around the screw hole, or the slot, or wherever the screw's got to go. Now that blue tack will hold that screw there while I get the other bit lined up. There we go, and my clumsy fingers, I don't have to deal with it now. There we go, get it started, and we can take the blue tack off. Problem solved. Grab another one of these 1.5mm M4 screws. I'm not sure if this is how I'm going to mount it. I might turn out that I just mount it using the middle hole. Let's see. I haven't worked through this before, so. But for now, this will do. As I say, this time at the moment, I'm just going to put the camera mount in. I'm not going to put the whole camera in because I'm being lazy. And I just want to get through and have a look, see how the frame looks. Again, the short slot goes on the bottom, the long slot goes to the rear. Not sure if you can see that really, I'll just move that forward. Is that in? That's not in. Right there. Hands are cramping a bit, again due to that neck injury, bit of a pain. Here we go. And let's find the last one of those little 1.5mm M.1.5 4mm long screws. Oops. Drop it in, oops, line it up, drop it in, let me begin. Alright, so that's kind of a hastily attached camera mount, but it'll do just for the time being. In fact, that's got way too much slope for me if I was going to fly, I reckon, but whatevs. I'll be revising the way I mount the camera, but that's where the camera goes. It goes in between these two plates. Like that. The plates themselves then, you got these tabs on the back of the K plates, and the tabs go in these holes, these 4 holes. Those 4 holes, or those 4 slots I should say, kind of like this. Nice tight fit, which is great. Very tight fit in fact, but the tight fit's good, I reckon. Now the other thing is you might need to align these standoffs so the flat is flat against the camera, the K mount, so there's not a corner pointing at the K mount. That's not going for me. Let's try that. Let's first instance back that off a little bit and back that off a little bit, so we've got room to turn. Let's go and get that to go in. That's better. That rear one's a bit tight for me, still can't get that in. There we go, that's in. The front one's in. Now get the flat lined up there, and whoops, bring that home. There we go. Now how's that got to go? So got to get the rear one in. There we go. That one's in. That one's in. There's your camera mount on. Beautiful. Alrighty. Next stage is the LiPo pad and the antenna mounts. Okay, so you put your LiPo pad on, and then apparently the next thing you do is you put the top plate on. I'm a bit surprised by that. I thought the next thing would be to put the antenna mounts on, the receiver antenna mounts, but that's not the case. So let's follow the instruction. Now, so what we have is some 8mm bolts, 8mm M3s. and they go on the front here, on the front standoffs. So get the plate in, line the slots. If you can get those slots aligned nicely, once you get them aligned, it'll go in sweetly like that. Beautiful. That's a pretty nice fit. So as I say, we grab ourselves some M8s. And they hold the front on, just like that. Now, that's probably a bit longer than it needs to be, and the reason for that is because if you use the TPU mount, that's going to go in there as well. And if you put the TPU mount on, that goes on with the washer. For the time being, I'm just going to go with the frame by itself, no TPU mount. And you pop an M6 in this hole here behind the camera, which when you add the TPU mount, I suspect you move over to an M10. And on the rear, you've got these two M6s. So for the rear here, more M6s. Oh, sorry, not M6s, M3, 6mm long M3s. If I've been saying M6s, I meant M3s that are 6mm long. But I've been blowing it apparently. Okay. And the last part is going to be your antenna mounts. Now I'm not going to cut these tubes, but basically you take your antenna mount, you pop your tube through, and which ones, where's it go? Like that, so like that. And the other one will be like, I'm trying to work out if there's a left and a right for these, or if they are... No. There is a left and a right. So anyway, it's a left and a right. So you grab your tube, you put it into the angled side hole, like that. That sits on top of the standoff. I'm not sure if I might have to loosen the top plate off. Let's see. No, it sits on top of the standoff, and then you take a 16mm M3 button head. That goes through, and that holds on the antenna mount, as well as providing, I guess, a bit of structural integrity for the whole thing. So in it goes, like that. Now, this is what's called an interference fit, because the nylon antenna tube protrudes into the channel where the screw goes. So I'm not sure if we'll be able to see it here. Let's try and get that straight. Does that help? So in there, I think you can just see it. You can see the nylon tube in through the thread hole. So what happens is the threads from the screw, the bolt, bite into that tube and they prevent it from coming out. So right now, without the bolt, let me just slide that in there. You can move the tube quite freely, but as soon as you put that bolt in and give it a couple of turns, and this is the 16mm M3 button head, by the way, as soon as you put that bolt through and give it a couple of turns, that tube's locked in now because the bolt threads are biting into the tube. So that's pretty much it. Of course, you cut your antenna tubes to whatever length you want. I'd say probably about half. But that basically is your ImpulseRC Reverb built. That's what it looks like. That's how you put it together. So at some point I might come back and finish off with a full build video. But for right now, I'm going to sign off and have a drink. Speak to you all a bit later maybe. Ciao.